Hi BookTube, welcome back. I'm Winx, and the ink I'm talking about today is SFF Books. I was tagged by Michael bitten by a radioactive bug to do the SFF Book Tag. So I'm going to go through the questions and give it a try. Question 1 is, what's your favorite sci-fi genre, and what's your favorite book in that genre? And this was actually an interesting one for me to think about. I hadn't really thought that much about what my favorite sci-fi subgenres are. I just kind of grabbed books that sounded good. And I would have thought that my answer would be space opera, because connecting with characters and their stories is just a really important thing for me in any book that I read. But the more that I thought about it, the more that I realized my favorite books really aren't as much in that genre, but are more in cyberpunk or hard sci-fi. I definitely still have to be able to connect with the character and their story, but I really like sci-fi books specifically that explore the human technology connection and see how we can use technology to save us and how we can be overcome by technology or use it to cope with future dystopian situations. And I'd say, as for my favorite, I actually have to say a few books that sort of sweep the spectrum of that, and that's Andy Weir's The Martian, Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, and Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Question 2 is, what's your favorite sci-fi being? I think my favorite sci-fi being has to be an android. I really love androids and that in-between human and machine kind of realm, and definitely my favorite android is Data from Star Trek The Next Generation. Question 3 is, what's your favorite sci-fi gadget? And I shouldn't have watched Michael's video, I think, before doing my own. He answered this question with the replicator from Star Trek, and now I just can't possibly think of anything that would be better than that. I hate cooking. I don't like having to go to the grocery store to get all my groceries for the week, and it would be so great if I could just talk to the wall and ask it for my coffee and it would instantly appear. That would be glorious, and I'm sorry, Michael, but I have to steal your answer. That's the greatest sci-fi gadget. Question 4 is, what sci-fi book had the biggest breakthrough in your opinion? And I had a really hard time coming up with this. I ended up deciding to go with The Old Man's War by John Scalzi. I think I'm inclined to answer with that just because I recently read that whole series in one go, so it's still pretty fresh in my brain. And giving away the exact idea is kind of spoilery for the first book, so I'll just say that it's how the Colonial Defense Force makes its army and its special agents. I think that the idea behind the technology itself has a lot of breakthrough ideas in it, even though there's kind of a mad scientist vibe about it. Question 5 is, what's your favorite fantasy genre and your favorite book within that genre? My favorite fantasy genre is probably a mix between high fantasy and heroic fantasy. I really love fantasy stories where they have their own unique world with lore and history and complex magical systems, and I also really like following a hero's journey. And so I think my favorite novel or series in this genre right now is probably the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. Question 6 is, what's your favorite magical or fantastical being? I was a little bit split here, actually. I've been recently rereading the His Dark Materials trilogy, and I forgot how much I loved those books and the demons in them, and all I can think about with the demons is like my cats. If you've been watching my channel, you probably know that I'm a little bit obsessed with my cats, and so I like to think of them as sort of my little demon companions. So I'm really feeling connected to the demons in those books, but I would also have to say dragons, because I love dragons in fantasy, and when they're portrayed as these ancient, super intelligent, mysterious creatures, or when they're super cute, like Glurb here. This is Glurb the dragon. Question 7 is, what is your favorite fantastical artifact? I was split here again. At first I just wanted to say the pensive, I don't actually know how you pronounce that, from Harry Potter, where you can like pull your memories out and put them in vials. It would just be kind of amazing to be able to go back and see real memories from your ancestors or from major events in human history. My other favorite artifact is Sting from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I wish I could have Sting I wish I could have a programmable sting. So like it could glow blue for orcs, but it could also glow purple for the person at the office that I don't want to run into. That would be kind of the greatest thing of all time. Question 8 is, what fantastical world do you think is the most developed and that was the most thought through? And for that I have to say Tolkien's Middle-earth. I think that is just so complex. There's so many histories and languages and races that it's hard to read any of those books without just feeling completely immersed in the world. Question 9 is, what sci-fi and fantasy book combined do you think would make the most amazing of stories? I couldn't really think of a great specific sci-fi and fantasy book to combine. I just kept thinking about Pierce Brown's Red Rising trilogy, which I read the first 2 a few months ago, waiting for the next one to come out, but it's one of my favorites right now. And it really strikes me as a sci-fi and fantasy sort of book combined. It's like if Game of Thrones were set in some sort of like military space scene that was highly influenced by Roman mythology. And question 10 is, what are the most underrated sci-fi and fantasy books you've ever read? I couldn't think of a good sci-fi book for this, but for fantasy I definitely have to say the Night Runner series and Tamir Triad. They're both by Lynn Llewellyn, both set in the same universe. I love these books. I recommend them all the time, and I've never recommended them to someone who already heard of them. I feel like they aren't as well known as I would have expected. They are probably the most reread books in my collection, and I love them, so definitely have to go with those. So there you go, that wraps up my SFF book tag. It was really fun to do, so thanks Michael for tagging me. I'm still pretty new, so I don't have a whole lot of people to tag here, but I do want to tag Hazel from the Space Possum. She reads a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, so I would be really interested to hear what she has to say about some of these questions. Alright, well thanks guys, and I'll see you later. Bye!